Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's the wonderful Mr. Carey, Marx. Yay! Hey! Hello, mate. How are you?
Well, I feel great now. I wish I got that kind of enthusiasm every time I walked on a stage.
You know I'm a big fan. You know I'm a big fan.
I can hardly wait to hear myself interviewed now.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, all very good. Yeah, nice. And weather's just how I like it at the moment.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it?
It's not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
Very finicky when it comes to weather. So, been out for a good long walk today, and yes, it's all good.
Good, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. The interview is going to last normally about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and it's all about your comedy career. I may throw in the odd anecdote here and there of my 50 years watching you all, but the first question I'd like to ask you is, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
Well, I kind of fell into it, Richard. Really, I was doing magic for years. I don't know if you know that.
Right, I didn't know that. No,
I used to work as a magician, and
wow.
I started off in the holiday camps.
Brilliant.
So my first ever time performing was what they used to do with the green people who started working there. They used to throw them in the deep end. So one day I was told cabaret's late, go on the cabaret floor, and you need to fill time until the cabaret gets here, and do not lose the audience. Keep it funny, keep it amusing. He should be here soon. And I ended up doing about 3/4 of an hour. It was a trick they played. There was no cabaret coming, and I just anything I could to keep the thing going. So that was how I started performing. Where time on a stage.
Where were the comedy? Where were the holiday camps?
I started at Wick Ferry and then worked my way. It was in Christchurch. Went to South Downs and then spent about 3 years up in Southport.
Wow!
So I got around a bit, and it was great, because it was a bit like running away to the circus when you're young.
Yeah.
And you're suddenly in an environment that's non-stop entertainment, happenings, crazy world I was in. So it was very exciting and hard work.
The reason why I asked that is that our earliest family holidays, my home city's Carlisle. We used to go to Scarborough and Torquay. We used to go to holiday camps there, and that's where I saw my first comedians. First ever comedian I saw was Les Dawson, age 7. Right. What a start! And then
he was age 7.
No, I was age 7.
I bet he was rubbish.
That's brilliant. And then a year later, I saw Tommy Cooper say about magician.
Right.
Just incredible. The curtains open. There's nothing on stage but a bed, and he's lying on it. And for 5 minutes, this one woman was pissing herself laughing, and it trickled round. Everybody was laughing. He hadn't done a thing. And after about 5 minutes, he just popped his head up and he went, "What? Somebody come on!" Man was a genius.
Well, they look back on now as it's so incredibly old mainstream. The entertainment centres, but at the same time, there was some great acts there. It was fascinating, and I kind of learned stagecraft. I learned how to use a microphone and so on. But the first time I ever saw stand up. I was doing magic around, and I went to the Comedy Store in London.
Yeah.
And this was back when it was downstairs, when you'd walk into a basement through a layer of smoke, and there was it was officer passing a spliff around to try and make the audience funnier, and then the spliff reached me, and I tried, and I was mate. It was real. I was like, "Wow!" This is and I kind of fell in love with the entire environment of stand-up comedy from that point.
There's something about the wonderful community. We've just come back from a fantastic week at Hastings Comedy Festival, and all these festivals and fringes and whatnot. They're little communities, and they're just designed for you to have the most amazing time, and that's what I love about going. It's so good. Comedy nights are just the best. What sort of year are we talking about when you did the magic and you thought, I'm going to have a crack at comedy?
It was on and off towards the end of the century. So I think I did. What happened was I went into the Comedy Store, and back in those days, you could just walk straight on stage. They'd get people from the audience up, so you could get up and try some. So that was my first ever attempt at doing comedy. I wasn't probably trying to get into the clubs. I just thought this was an odd place you could go to and try out ideas. But the no, 'cause I guess I kind of was in and out for a while. I performed odd places, and then I did my first few gigs. I went up to Edinburgh. I think it was something like 95 or 97, and did a show there. And then I did Scream Blue Murder's show, the Big Value show, and that was
Yeah.
This will make a lot of newer comedians cry their eyes out, but. Back then, we got paid £1,100 each. We got accommodation. We got travel up there.
Wow,
And,
I knew that.
there were two package shows, and it was full every night, and it was an amazing bill. So yeah, that was my first ever proper performance, I guess, proper performing time.
So the first time I ever saw you was 2013 at We Love Comedy at Ballard Hills Club. Now that was an official comedy night, but did you have an apprenticeship in pubs where you would do 5-10 minute slots, bring friends along to support, things like that? Was that?
Did I go through the open spots?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A lot of them do.
That's why I'm. By the way, Richard, that's why I'm called Carey Marx. It's not my real name. I am Carey. All bits to change. That's probably the bit I should have changed. But my Mark is my middle name. It's Carey Mark Peters. But I was performing big magic shows, illusion shows. Women getting sliced in half, set on fire, and so on. And then I was being paid well for that. And then I wanted to do stand-up. So I was doing a few stand-up gigs. And one day, one of the gigs rang me and said, what name do you want us to put down? And I didn't want to put down my name. So I didn't want anyone who was paying me hundreds of pounds to do these magic shows to see me dying on my backside in a club. So I took my middle name and made it my surname. And really, that's where it came about. But I at first, for a long time, I was only messing around. I would do a very different set almost every time I performed when I started.
Yeah.
So it was a long slow process. But yes, I went through all the open spot places. You have to, you have to die on your backside a few times to learn how to do this trade.
I've always said to a lot of the comedians I've interviewed, I'm presuming that you have to have a bad gig in order to be a better comedian, because it's all experience.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I mean, if you've never had a bad gig, then first of all, that's suspicious. That's really you're not trying. You can't be taking risks. And you need to take risks when you're starting out. You need to be able to lose a few gigs. It's painful because you want to impress everyone when you start.
Yeah.
And really you have to let that go, because no, the bad gig does you so many favors overall, and it also hardens you up. You need a thick skin to do this. So
you see, when you say that, I can't ever imagine you having a bad gig, because every time I've seen you, you have made me cry with laughter till I'm aching. So I mean, I remember going to. Did you ever go to the Up the Creek gigs when they used to do the Sunday and get loads of acts on, and Malcolm and the audience were all professional hecklers, and they were some of the best hecklers in the whole country. The hecklers would go there for that gig, and they were, the problem was they were good. They weren't like the normal bad hecklers, so they would win frequently. But also it was a harsh atmosphere. And there was one, I remember going on, and I think Malcolm had given me an introduction. It was something like, this is Carey Marx. I've heard he's shit, but he means well. And Malcolm Hardy, God bless him.
And I walked on to an audience. So someone was booing me in the audience. Someone was shouting some abuse at me. There was a woman who started shouting "Get off," and then started shouting "Go and kill yourself." She was like really screaming it hard, like over everything.
That is harsh.
I was trying to. How's this for a bad gig? If you've ever had a bad gig? And I came off stage. Sorry, turn off. I came off stage and I went to the bar, pretty upset. And this woman came up to me and she said, "No, I meant it. You should kill yourself." That was a pretty bad gig, you know.
Wow.
I had gigs like that. I had gigs that were such horrible deaths that you can't get to the bus stop fast enough, and where someone has run out afterwards to and follow me to the bus stop to tell me how bad I was.
Mate, that is horrible. That is awful. Thick skin you have to be. I the only time I've ever had a go at stand-up comedy, I've had a go once, and I used to know this promoter, and he goes, "We've got a gong show on a Monday afternoon with old people in the audience. Couldn't be worse." And so I walked on. I had this script where I used to crash cars in Carlisle. I'd just passed my driving test, and he loved it. And I walked out, and he said, "Right, you got 3 minutes. See how long you last." And I walked out, and I said, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can see the resemblance myself. Of course, at the time, and still do, I'm his double." One old fella at the back just went, "Fuck off!" and walked up to me in footsteps. He goes, the promoter goes, "Have another go." I went, I don't know, but I think I'm in the audience supporting you. I think that's where I belong.
But it's also delicate, isn't it? Because
never say never again.
Things like you have an opening line, and if that doesn't work, then you're now fighting. You have to rescue yourself from the very beginning. So it's complex.
It is. I mean, it's extraordinary how you and comedians like you in particular, when you walk on stage, you're determined to make that audience. You can give the impression you're determined to make that audience laugh, and you're not going to leave until everybody is laughing. And you've got that in spades, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I do try.
So, what do you like to talk about on stage? Do you have any specific themes at all?
It's a really hard one to. You've seen me. Do you think I've got a theme?
What I like about you is that you never know what you're going to get with you, and I prefer that. I love the off the wall comics. I love comedians like Boothby Graffoe who you just never know what you're going to get with him. And
yes.
He was a guest on here, Boothby Graffoe, and he introduced me to his family as he walked to his seat and his dogs, and then he sat down and he went, "What's all this about then?" And we were away. It was lovely. But I love stuff like that, and you're very good at that. Very often.
I guess if I'm doing a show, it's so different. You know, every I think 2 or 3 years, I'll go up to Edinburgh or around the world with a heavily themed show. The one I've just done was in Australia, and it was called "The Dead Don't Heckle," and it's a story of a séance that I ran once, but really the whole show is about pseudoscience, and I kind of feel it's relevant that a lot of these beliefs that were being sort of pushed down a little bit are sort of rising again through the internet, and even now there's people manifesting things in their life, you know, with inspired by controlling the universe. People bending metal again and so on, which is even fascinating that there's people doing metal bending now on the internet and claiming they're causing the atoms in the spoon to heat up, which would require the atoms to heat. The spoon would have to heat to about 1400 degrees, and your hand would melt. But at the same time as there's people doing this on YouTube, you can also go to YouTube and look up how it's done. Right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's a very strange age of belief now, where you can find truth and you can find lies, and they're so integrated. So I thought I'd do a show about that. So that's what this one was. And when I'm writing sometimes it's very nice to write within the box. You know, so you have that's what's good about having a strong subject matter. But then every few years also I'll go around with a show that's really just a mix of my latest stand-up and with a sort of thin theme put through it. For doing a stand-up gig, I don't like to be suited. I think the reason I won't get into a heavy subject is I feel like it's too self-indulgent. It's not my gig.
Yeah.
If I'm doing my own show, it's my space to talk about whatever I want to. But when I'm doing a gig, then it's a load of people from different backgrounds who I don't know, who haven't come to see me. They've come to see a show. So I just want to have fun. And also, I kind of like, there's a lot of real in my humor, which is, real issues on which I'll have a jab at. But I only see myself as the comedian looking down on the world, making a comment. I'm not trying to convince
anyone. That's not true.
and I like being surreal. I'm more likely, like, if someone did you're going to come in going, oh, if I was an astronaut and I was walking on Mars, then blah blah blah. If I'm writing a joke, I walked on Mars and this happened, you know. So I'm kind of I prefer first person. I prefer so a lot of it's surreal, but it's really doing the what if, but actually treating it as if it happened.
What I also like as well in your act is that you like to take things to the furthest you can.
Yeah,
Insane.
yeah,
How far can you get away with? And it's so funny because you're very good at. I think the words is it topping, where you top a joke
yeah. You can talk
and you
joke,
keep
but
going. You keep going. It's wonderful. You have mentioned it, but tell me more about the writing process you have for a routine show. If you have one, you might not.
I wish I had one. I wish I could tell you. Yeah, do you know what I do is I take the works of Macbeth and have them translated into Polish, and then I take every third letter and it comes out as a joke. Like I said, I wish I had. I don't. What I do, no, I mostly if it's a show and it's a subject, then probably that subject's obsessing me at the moment.
Right.
And if it's obsessing me, I'm reading a lot on it. I'm you know, articles, books, and so on. And the humor just sort of happens naturally through doing that. Where it's jokes, where it's like my set, no, I don't know actually. It's just something happens. Someone says a thing that I have a reaction to, or I go into a shop, I'm treated in a particular way, and then I want to talk about it. And then I think I don't know. I think I do sit down and do writing sessions.
Right.
You know, I kind of force myself, and also because sometimes it's nice to, and you're having to go out and stop and have a coffee and bring out your notebook and make a few notes.
Yeah.
But really, they're very general points, and I very rarely get a wording down that I'll think if I'm doing new material night. I love new material nights. I love them. I love seeing comedy where it's that raw and everyone's going on stage not knowing whether something's actually fun. Even we can, after years being in this business, we can write a piece and go, there's pieces I'll walk on with where I'll say, I know this is going to get a reaction. But there's other bits where I go, I am about to launch into a piece and I have no idea whether they're going to go with me on this. So I really enjoy that feeling.
I love comics that can do that. One of my favourite ever routines was done by a friend of mine, Gary Jennison, who runs the whole comedy festival. And he walked on in place of another comedian who couldn't make it. And literally walked onto the stage and he went, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about for the next 15 minutes. Has anybody got any questions or comments? And I said to him from the audience, last week I gave up crisps after 30 years because I think I've got diabetes. And from that sentence, he created this incredible 20-minute routine about crisps.
Right. Okay.
You're very, very good at that. You pick words and you just go with them. It's so good.
Yeah. He made fun of your diabetes, did he?
Well, I don't know whether I've got it. I'm very up and I'm very down.
Okay. Yeah, it's very easy to take someone mocking you when you haven't actually got the thing they're mocking you for. Yeah. Well, when I go on and do new material, though, I'll word it in my head on the way to a night, and then I'll say something completely different anyway. So, but I think once you said things 2 or 3 times, it starts to form, and then it develops into a routine.
Yeah. This is a good question I like to ask because nobody's got a very good answer, really. I think it's quite.
I'm glad you like your own questions.
What do you think, if at all, makes a good comedian? What would you say makes a good comedian?
Are we talking about good comedians or great comedians?
Either.
That's a different thing. I think anyone could be good at this. First of all, to be funny, anyone could be funny. I really think. I think sometimes you see new material acts and you see someone go on and be funny. That's never going to work anywhere else. You had a very nice audience there, who they let you get away with a lot. Being good isn't being able to go on and be funny. Being good is be able to go on and do that everywhere, like up and down the country, all over the world, whatever the mood and so on. It's being consistent makes you good. being great is when someone's been around for a while and they've got lots of different tools and they know how to use them.
Yeah, yeah.
Then they can take us on all kinds of journeys and rants and really smart lines and lots of different tricks come in and skills of playing. So I find it fascinating what's really skilled comedians. There's yourself, there's comedians who've been around for a long time, and one or two things either happen. They either become bitter, right? They've not got famous, and they'll do the same word for word act now just to milk it for the rest of their lives. It's something kind of sad that happens. But there's others who never stop working and never stop producing, and they're fascinating to watch because they've got these years of experience of how to perfectly deliver a joke and turn a joke, but also at the same time play with the atmosphere in the audience. I think the biggest part of a joke that people don't really talk about, they talk about the setup, punchline, reveal, so on, but they don't really talk about atmosphere. Atmosphere is the biggest part of it.
Oh, without
atmosphere is partially, it's all the difference between telling a joke at the bishop's tea party or to your mates in the pub, right? It could be the same joke. So it's not the joke, it's the conditions you tell it in. And the comedian has some power over those conditions. Only so much. If an audience are really drunk, there's only so much you can do, or they're nasty, there's only so much you can do. But largely we get to set a mood that the jokes fall into. And so a good comedian is someone who can do all the technical stuff and also play with that atmosphere.
That's a brilliant answer. Thank you so much for that. How do you cope with any nerves if before you go on stage, if you get them at all?
I've never had nerves. Never.
Is that honest? You've never had nerves?
I feel like I should have done that, especially with various phases of my acting when I've been experimental and I've gone through different phases of doing different types of performance. And there are times I look back and go, oh no, you definitely should have felt nervous doing that. Apprehension, I do. It's a different feeling. It's sometimes, and I largely don't do this as much anymore, but I used to do it quite a lot, is I can talk myself out of a gig really easily.
Right.
I'd see someone on stage who's comedy to me I don't go for, or I think is really cheap, or it's doing something that is just doing the same thing over and over again. There's no real skills going on, and the audience are thinking it's clever, and I go, oh, I don't want to perform to them now. Or the audience are a bit racist or something, and I've just gone off them. So that can happen.
Yeah.
Or conditions, and the room is really hot. I hate working with hot rooms. I always sweat. I'm hyperhidrosia. You ever seen clowns cry where the tears fire out? I fire in the back row. So if it's a really hot room, I'm already going, oh, I don't want to do this. This is I'm not going to be comfortable on stage. But no, apart from that, when I first started out, it was I remember the advice was to picture the audience naked. You must have heard of that. That's what he's saying, it. Picture the audience naked, and it makes you feel more confident. I think I tried that, but they all had bigger penises than me. So and I actually performed to an audience who were naked in one of the army gigs in Cyprus, and they used the RAF to try and put you off by taking their clothes off. And I can tell you, you don't feel more confident performing naked. You actually, they kind of have the power over you in the reality of that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Would you say that as soon as you get your first laugh, any nerves that you may have had go?
It certainly helps. I mean, you've got to remember that a lot of nerves also come, and fear also comes from sustaining.
Yeah.
That first laugh is really big. Your next couple of laughs are really big. Now you're worried about your next thing. You've got to keep up this level now. Now that getting an audience reaction really helps. I tell anyone who's going to be on a microphone for the first time, even if it's doing a speech at a wedding or whatever, say good evening, say hello, say something that will have the audience react back to you, and that it stops you feeling alone.
Yeah,
it kind of tells your head that they're listening and they're willing to react to you. So it's always good. But yeah, the opening of although sometimes because of that, I kind of go against it. I do like going on stage and getting a big laugh straight away. That's great,
Yes,
and it
yeah,
sets you up. But
yeah.
I also I'll sometimes run on the stage, and I'll sometimes walk on stage really slowly and let it die off completely because I want silence. And it's more. I think nowadays I kind of set myself up a little bit. There's times I've walked on stage and just walked around for a little while without saying anything, and I set up a chair, put my drink down, don't even look at the audience, and then sort of wander over in my own time. And it kind of depends on my mood, and sometimes it's because I dare myself not to do things.
It's so.
I will dare. I will sometimes before I go on stage, I will dare myself that halfway through my act, I have to walk away from the microphone and walk a complete circle around on the stage without saying anything, just because the atmosphere is interesting.
That's so brilliant, so good. How do you remember all your routines? Do you have pointers in your head? Do you write notes? Do you have them on your hand? Anything like that?
We all do the writing on the hand occasionally, don't we?
Yes, we do.
It's not great, but if I've got a load of new bits, several new pieces I want to throw into the set tonight, I will write them down on my hand.
Yeah.
I think the process of doing it helps. It's really hard to read your hand invisibly during the set. Even you see all the cleaners who look at their watches, and if you do that too much, it looks. But I think it's all right to take a look at your watch because everyone knows you've got a time limit.
Yeah. Just once. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to use ruses, or I'll look at my watch and go, right, that's it, or oh, that's enough. But when I used to do the magic tricks years ago, I always had an excuse to pull a rope or something and have a good look at my watch. But and when I started, I just remembered this. When I started, I had a watch that broke, so it didn't have the straps anymore. So I would keep a watch face palmed in my hand during my set, so I could look at it. But with the lines, also lines are better written on your palm. But I don't know why we don't do that. Actually, I think it's because the audience would see it too easily. So we write them on the back of our hands, and then you go to the loo before you go on, and you can't wash your hands properly because you don't wash your set off. Nowadays, if I do a new material night, I will write it down and go on with notes because I don't want to waste the point of doing it by messing it up. I want to try and get to the pieces I intended to do.
They normally have notebooks on a table or a notebook with it open, so they can go over. Lloyd Griffith is an excellent example of that, where he tells a new material joke. It's a new material now. He tells a joke, and the reaction he gets in his mind, he goes, right, that's okay. Let's move on. And he's very good at getting the laugh from the pause after telling the joke, whether it's gone well or not. And
yes, absolutely
as well.
But it's also, I see I've directed a few Edinburgh shows and so on, and also from doing my own shows. You tend to, during previews and sometimes your first couple of shows in Edinburgh, have a cheat board somewhere. If you can hide it behind a speaker or something, and it's giving you heading, just to remind yourself of the order and odd bits you want to say. But there's a massive difference that happens once you get off the board, and it takes a time when tonight you're going to have to trust yourself and not have that crutch to fall back on. And at that point, the show tends to start improving a lot because you're now able to speak. I was listening to a radio play recently, and you could hear they were reading it. Play. It was a sitcom, but you could hear they were reading, and it doesn't have the same feel of people who have learnt the lines. And
what was so interesting with that story is that the most creative thing I've done, other than this blog, was write a play. Originally it was for Edinburgh, but we put it on years ago for Comic Relief. It's called The Applicant.
Right.
And it's basically monologue, actors, monologue, and it's basically about me coming down from Carlisle to London. I've got a successful girlfriend in London, and I've never had an interview. So I have no clue how the interview process works. So my mate, who appeared in the play with me, he's very good at accents. He played all the interviewers. There's plot. It goes on. So this monologue, I run out and I have pages, which I've never realised. Never write monologues because you'll forget. Because I ran out and I was like a rabbit in headlights. We'd rehearsed this thing and I forgot the words. I was just like, throwing words at the audience, thinking, "I want to go home."
Right.
and then the mate come on, and what was interesting, we could bounce off each other and bring it back. But we did 3 shows, and the second and third show there was no hitch whatsoever. But that I've never forgotten that. And I think learning lines. Is it fair to say comedy is different to acting because of that? You've got, like, for example, the audience to bounce off if you go slightly, or you forget stuff.
Yeah, and also you develop silly bits of business you can do for if that happens. And
Well,
it does still happen, Richard. I'll sometimes I love bringing out old pieces that I haven't done for a while and just airing them. Keeping them oiled. I like to have armaments there. So I'll take a piece I haven't said for ages and I'll just throw it out suddenly if I get in that mood. And but sometimes doing that, you haven't said it for so long, you get to a bit, you go, I've got no idea what comes back. I don't know how this goes. What was I even thinking? And now you're stuck with it. So yeah, and at times like that, you either have to tell the audience or you have to find a way out.
Yeah.
Finding an escape route. And yeah, there you need every ruse you can do. You can only do that once. You can't do it throughout a set.
No. That's so funny. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I am very lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Festival every year. My first one was 2005, and I've been going every year apart from 2 years with the pandemic. This year I'm branching out to do more festivals and fringes because, as I said at the top, I love the atmospheres of them. Tell me about your first ever Edinburgh Fringe. What year was it? Did you go up as a punter? Were you in a show, anything like that?
Well, it's the one I mentioned to you, which was the Scream Blue Murder show, which was the Big Value, which I think it was 97. I'm pretty sure it was 97. And I'd run a little comedy club for a while, so I was sort of comparing that, and they'd heard about me, and then I got asked to do it. I didn't have an act at that point. I'd just done a bit of comparing, so I went to the preview in London. On the way there, I was with my brother, and we stopped off, and there was a veg shop, and outside they had a potato, and it was huge, like this giant potato. And I thought there's something very funny about that potato. So I took it with me, and this is back in the days when you could do this sort of thing. I put it in my back pocket, and I walked on stage with a potato in my back pocket. And I went up to someone in the audience, and I went, magic, 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 magic. Magic, 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 magic. And then I reached into my back pocket, and I pulled out this giant potato, and I reached up to his ear and pretended to pull it out of his ear. And it went really well. I mean, it got a huge applause. And then I messed around with it, trying to make the potato vanish and doing like the sleight of hand, but with a giant potato. And then I had a few jokes and things at the time, so I kind of made it up, and that became my act. So I kind of went up to Edinburgh without an act, and everyone else was really established and really good in that show. Curiously, at the end of that festival, I got onto the BBC stand-up show at the time when it was really cool to do, and I performed that trick. I went out with the potato.
Wow!
And when I saw the recording back, it was the first time I realised why it had got a laugh and why it was getting the reaction it was getting, because it actually looked good. I thought I did this every night of that festival, and I thought the joke was I'm obviously making a potato appear that's too big to hide the palm in your hand, and obviously it looks ridiculous. But it turned out it was a really good trick. It was very, very effective. And the audience were reacting because they'd genuinely seen me pull a potato out. So my act that year was I ended up with potatoes. I pulled carrots out of people's ears. I would walk on stage with pockets full of vegetables, and that was it really. And it was there was only 2 package shows in Edinburgh, and it was great to do, and it was an amazing bill, and it was back in the days when you could just play around and have fun rather than do a set show.
Props are very special, I think. I always remember queuing up to see Arthur Smith at the Fringe, and to say hello to everybody, he presented them with a little rock.
Oh, really?
Which was really just have a rock, have a good show.
That's really sweet.
And there was another instance at the Comedy Store. I've been going to the Comedy Store for years. I can never remember the act, but they used to juggle fruit. and
Oh, really?
I'd seen them on the Thursday, and I saw them again on the Saturday. And on the Thursday, they juggled fruit and then threw one of the pieces of fruit into the audience, asked them to throw it back, and carried on throwing. So on the Saturday, they're doing the same thing, and I said to my mate, "This is brilliant. Watch this." And the man, the act, looked over to me as though he was going to throw the fruit. He threw it, and I took a pint of beer, and it just went all over, and he went all over the place, ruined his act, and he went as though he wanted the thing back, and it was like.
That was my first Edinburgh doing the package show, and then my first show I think was '99.
Right,
which was my first solo show.
And you've been going regularly ever since, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, never stopped.
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't do anything else. It's my only way of inflicting myself on people now, is to do comedy. I still love seeing a magician, but I don't do that anymore. I kind of stopped. I faded that all out, and I was my career was over by a few people. But I kind of always just wanted to be doing the stand. I still like watching a good magician, and I used to do like silly magic stuff. But there's something so pure about stand-up. The fact that someone is going on and working with nothing more than words. And I find that fascinating. But when I started doing stand-up, I was so pure. I wouldn't do any mugging. I didn't like doing funny voices. I didn't like acting of any kind. I'd reduce the jokes down to no accents, no anything. I had rules. I had to the joke had to be absolutely devoid of any kind of trickery or stuff. So
that's so interesting because it's so throwaway, and I mean that in the most wonderful sense that you perform it. It's so interesting that you are very, very structured in performing it.
Oh, I think I was when I started, because I started with the props and then I went completely the other way. Nothing that would even represent kind of a prop in verbal form.
Yeah.
It was more of a challenge, really.
To date, what do you think your comedy highlight has been?
Of my life?
Of your career or your life?
Of my career? I don't know. I mean, a good gig is still an amazing experience. You know, it's when you go on and you just I've done big shows with theatre audiences where like a gala thing in Edinburgh, and it was went on TV, and galas in New Zealand. And when you walk onto a huge theatre and it's packed, and the audience is so weird that every nuance and you can raise an eyebrow when you're getting the laughs and so on, and then the jokes play big. That is such an exciting experience. I still get those from doing like the Comedy Store when it's packed. Full, that huge room with a tiny stage, and because you're surrounded.
Amazing.
A laugh hits you like a brick wall, you know, just falling on you. It's quite a big feeling. So I love those ones. Highlights? Do you mean as in shows I've done that were memorable? I mean, I used to do years ago when I was doing the magic stuff. It was probably the bigger, more prestigious things. I used to do the James Bond parties every year. I did Bill Wyman's wedding, and so I was doing tricks for the Rolling Stones. I did. I warmed up for Torvill and Dean. On ice. I performed to Princess Beatrice when she was 4 years old.
Wow.
But nowadays it's what I like about it is not doing. I used to get into loads of silly situations, but I like the clubs. And doing it. What I was going to say is doing a big show for a theatre audience, an amazing experience. But also doing one like when last time I saw you was at the King's Head, and doing a pub gig where the audience were lovely for the whole night, not just for me. And I still get a kick out of. I really like it when the flag flies high for comedy. You know, when people go to a comedy club and everything's great that night. Everything was great that night, wasn't it? Every act went on and they stormed it, and it was like
that whole week of celebration. I did on Tuesday nights. They had the 40th anniversary show, and I knew all the comedians. And Al, who headlined with his beer, he always comes on and throws the beer over the front row. He saw me and completely chucked it over me, and it was so good. And but I then saw Joe Bo's film on the Saturday. I went back Saturday afternoon, which was superb. His love letter to the club, and then
Yeah.
and you were a surprise guest, and it made my night that night. You were because
Oh yeah, I was
you're
expecting someone,
so
wasn't I?
doing it.
But I think sometimes the pub gig with just like a real crowd who are up for it is just a wonderful night out. So
Yeah.
I still get a kick out of those.
Very much so, yeah. Was there ever a point, there must have been a point where you thought, I can do this comedy well, I'm very good at it, and you've stuck with it? Or not?
Or not. Yeah, I'm still trying to convince myself, Richard. one day I'll be satisfied. I'm not easily pleased. Um,
Right.
I don't know. Yes, there's a point where no, no. I think what happens is the longer you've been doing it, there are two levels that keep changing, which is your minimum and your maximum level. So uh, how well you can storm every few years, you hit a new something happens, and you can hit even bigger reactions. You can get more applause breaks, you can get longer laughs, and so on.
Yeah.
But also your likelihood of dying, that's also rising. So you can die still, or it's very rare. I'm not being a big head here. I haven't died for many years now, but there are gigs that don't go well. But you've developed skills. I mean, you still walk off with your pride, and you've let them know it's their fault. I do have the motto: the audience is always wrong, when it doesn't seem like it. But no, I think you're forever trying to rise, and I mean, I'd like to get so good that the whole world changes as a result of a joke I've written. But
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, too right, too right. Have you done any online gigs as opposed to live comedy?
Oh God, yes. There was, of course, we all did online gigs during the lockdown, but there was one that was lovely. It was a little company who they're friends. They worked together, and they'd been shut out by the lockdown, so they all had to work from home. And so they agreed that they would get a comedian once every 2 weeks, I think it was. And it was just a handful of them. And normally doing a gig for a handful of people is very difficult, and especially on a Zoom call. Uh, because they were so up for it. It was actually I thought it was really sweet that they were all getting together and saying let's um, some communal thing going by putting on a comedian. So that was nice. Um, Largely, the Zoom gigs, they're hard. I think if we'd kept doing it, I think if it become more of a thing, we would have all developed ways of playing that audience. And they did get better because what they started doing towards the end was they would have a front row who were interactive. But when it first started, there wasn't, or it was either everyone was mic'd and you just hear these awful noises the whole way through, or it was no one was mic'd, and so you were falling to silence. Uh, I think, as I say, I think if I'd kept doing them, I would have developed a style of act, or material that suited that situation.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that's not what I set out to do, and it's not. The pleasure is having reaction from people. Obviously, it's you need the validation.
I totally agree with you. I thought that I mean I used to go to online gigs because there was nothing else. So on a Monday I'd go to Sean James's Happy Mondays gig. On a Wednesday I'd
Yeah.
go to comedy. Thursday I'd do Booth Big Raffos, and Friday I'd go to Jarlath Regan's. And when they were good, they were great. But when they started off, they didn't have any audio. There was no audio. They had people in the obviously on the Zoom, but there was no
Yeah.
audio. So here I was laughing at four walls very loudly with neighbours banging on the wall.
Thinking that you've gone mad.
I thought I was going to be
I think,
taken
what's
away.
he laughing at?
But
What they had at first as well was they had novelty value. No
yeah,
one,
yeah, yeah.
and the same with there were those outdoor gigs. I didn't do one of those
Um,
ones. Outdoor gigs where you're performing to people in cars,
yeah,
and
I had
that
to.
was pure novelty. That was never going to be a good gig. And never could be a good gig. It's an awful idea, but people were enjoying the novelty for a little while. But I remember doing a few Zoom gigs. You could do a gig from in your bed. That was a good thing.
I,
And I remember talking about that and just saying they're
yeah,
really hard to turn those gigs away because someone will ring you up and say, "Will you do this gig?" And you think, "Oh, do I want to do a gig from my bed? How much are they paying?" It's like 30 quid. You think, "Oh, well, that's not worth getting out of bed. Yeah, I guess I better do it." because there's no, I haven't got any possible excuse to
There
say
is,
no.
a long running joke at Always Be Comedy. Whenever I go to the front row, sometimes James Gill, the compere, will get me up and sing, and of course I can't sing.
Right.
I cannot sing a note. When we were online in the front row, I had a tennis racket, so I had a prop.
Ah, nice.
And so it can work well, but by God, you can't beat the live experience.
No, of course not. It is a live
You
experience.
know what you're going to get in the moment, and that's the
Yes.
magic of it. And you're very good, as I say, with surprise and off field, and it's wonderful to see your act. Whenever I see your name on a bill, I know I'm going to have a great time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I
I wish.
really genuinely mean that. I'm a massive fan. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
Now, when I started, I didn't really come. I think people come into it now with heroes. You know, they people watch a lot more comedy,
Yeah,
and you see with newer acts very often that you can often tell who it is that they like. I came into it not knowing anyone. You know, I'd never really watched any. There wasn't much stand up around, and there was a couple of TV shows, but that really wasn't the same as doing a live comedy show. So I came into it without it, and I kind of kept it that way for a long time. I kind of like not being influenced by anyone else.
yeah,
And still now, to be honest, I rarely watch a comedy special. I don't really. I see comedy every single week.
yeah.
You know, so I don't really need to do that. There's a lot of comedians who I think are really good and great, and they what they do. And then at some point, I kind of liked some of the comedy where it all started in America. You know, from Mort Saul, Lenny Bruce, Woody Allen, mainly because I think they were doing something that hadn't been done before. The comedy went from people doing jokes that were old to realizing they could talk about reality or their own lives, or
Yeah.
just discuss a subject and make it funny, and that's where it all starts from. So I kind of like that, and then I like the really interesting. I'm trying to think of a few names, but nothing really hitting me right now. But there's a few comics I'll watch. I don't tend to watch specials, but I like something that's well routined, or where something's doing something that I think is new or interesting. But I also love all my mates, Richard. If I talk about my comedy heroes, we've got comedians in this country who have been performing week in, week out all over the country and over the rest of the world for so long now. But there's some extremely skillful and brilliant acts.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you a list because I kind of feel like I'll be more aware of people I'm accidentally leaving out.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's loads of comedians on our circuit and friends of mine who I just think are amazing to watch and doing really interesting stuff.
What was brilliant that you mentioned was the uniqueness, and I've got to admire that, because if you don't compare yourself to somebody else, there's nothing to compare to, like you say.
Yeah.
And to have built the act to the standard that you have done without comparing is even more impressive.
Yeah, I think some people develop art by taking from other art, which is fine to do that as well.
Yeah,
They take what other people are doing artistically, and they try and do their version of that.
yeah.
And others, I'm very much of the school of I'd rather not know. It sounds really arrogant and ignorant, but I don't really care. I enjoy watching someone's act for their act, and I'm interested in technically what they're doing and so on. But and I'll enjoy it, and I'll find it funny, but I don't do it for learning purposes. So I don't particularly have that interest, and I see enough comedy not to have to watch many specials and so on.
Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
As a member of the audience, no. Unlike you, I have no choice but to go to a lot of comedy gigs.
Okay. So if you're on a bill of 5 acts, say,
Yeah,
would you stay and watch all the acts?
depends who the acts are. Depends if I've got to drive back.
Yeah.
The realistic factors of it. I often will. If I'm not driving, then I might stay for a drink. If I am driving, then no, I'll probably want to get off and leave. If it's someone who I think is particularly good, or I haven't seen them in a while, then yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I love watching new material acts. You know, on new material nights. And I also like new act nights. Seeing new acts, I think, is just, it's really interesting to see what people are trying, and also it's very raw, but it's quite fun for the fact that
It is.
sometimes they don't know what they're doing is hack, or they don't know, or what they're doing has got loads of possibilities to it, or is just someone who's got a very original take. So it's worth seeing.
That's brilliant. I've so much enjoyed chatting to you. You've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else you would like to say before we go? Where can people find you on social media? Do you have any
I'm okay. I'm trying to get better at social media.
But it's been a while.
You know what? For most old cunts like me, it doesn't come naturally. And also, I'm very private. I don't really.
Yeah.
Some people, I don't know when they must shit with their phones, constantly putting up videos. I don't know how they and tweets and stuff. I don't know how they do it. If I'm enjoying something, a meal or a chat with someone, I don't even think about snapping it and putting it up on the internet. So I haven't got much of a presence, but I should do, and I am going to start putting up more videos. I go through phases. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. Facebook, I go on and apologize once a month for ignoring everyone's questions or requests or birthdays or whatever. But largely, I don't do much there either. But as I said, my Instagram thing.
Is it just?
What's that?
On Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, is it just your name that people look for?
I think Instagram is Carey.Marx.
Right.
And Twitter is @CareyMarx, and TikTok, I think, is just Carey Marx.
You're one of.
I'm also planning on starting a podcast. I've had an odd few podcasts and things I've done, but the person I was doing them with has moved away, or something has happened that made it hard to continue. But I'm starting a new one soon, and it's called The Very Vital News.
Well, I wish you well with that.
Well, thank you. Any advice you can give me about podcasting? I'd like to hear.
I didn't have a clue. I did not know I didn't know what a blog was. I didn't know what a podcast was. And my friend who runs her own business in Carlisle, she said, "This is crying out for a blog and a podcast." And I said, "What?"
Okay.
She told me. So I have picked up a few tricks, but it's all off my own steam. This and I thought, well, I've got an original idea. Because nobody A could be bothered, or B has the time to write about every single fucking performance they've ever seen.
Yes, yeah. Turns out you have.
It's clearly a
turns out there is someone.
Yes. Hello. Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again live soon. Genuinely, you laugh so much. You are one of the best at what you do, and thank you.
Oh, shucks. Keep going.
You are. All the best to you, and take care.
Lovely. Thank you, Richard. Catch you soon, mate.
See you soon. Cheers then. Bye-bye.